Okay, you've been charged with a crime or about to be charged with a crime, and you're worried about court. And you should be worried about court. The other thing you need to be worried about is, of course, your record. In Massachusetts, CORI, we talk about as CORI, that is the Criminal Offender Record Information. That's basically your record. So the question really is, how does this affect your career and who can see what appears on this CORI? The answer is complicated and not straightforward. And I'm sorry about that, but basically here's how this works. Law enforcement can see basically, and the courts can see basically everything. An arrest, court appearances, dismissals, so on and so forth. Most employers can only see convictions. So if you do not have a conviction on your record, you don't really have a record. I mean, you've got a PCF number, that is probation classification file, but people don't see that. That's just for probation and law enforcement. So if you don't have a conviction, generally speaking, you're not going to have a CORI. But different employers or different levels of employers and different entities have different access. So things like hospitals can go much deeper. Certain financial institutions can go much deeper, schools, things like that. So if you're in one of those situations where you're a doctor or a physician or in healthcare or a teacher, this is a little bit different. But this is really important because in Massachusetts, especially if you're a first-time offender, you can kind of get two bites at the apple or one bite at the apple where you can potentially get charges dismissed prior to an arraignment. And that really helps you out because that stuff is generally speaking not going to show up on your CORI or your record. Okay. And then if you can't, and sometimes you can't, in fact, often you can't, if you can get your charges dismissed in a way that's a non-conviction way, that's going to help you keep a nice, clean record. There are some differences and there are some things you need to understand about, for example, like a quaff. It's not a conviction, but quaffs can generally show up on your record, although it depends on the level of access the requester has. So this stuff is complicated, but if you're a professional, you really need to think this through, and I'll help you do that because I represent professionals accused of committing crimes. And I'm attorney Nate Amendola, 781-740-0800.